first, like, or you have done something else. Maybe you have just signed in, but I connected to that link.
Do I let everyone in the meeting room? Is this the way it works? 3 people are waiting. Oh, I have to admit them all. That's the way. Oh, okay. Maybe you can do it automatically. Okay, it's 1 minute past the hour. I'm just going to give everyone a couple more minutes to join the meeting, and then we'll start in about a couple of minutes' time. Okay, we're going to get started. First off, what I wanted to do is welcome everyone to this first call that we have for our Dapper community meeting. We're going to keep this fairly light, and I wanted to spend some time really mostly for people to have a chance to ask questions. But I think given that this is the first one, and we're recording these, by the way, just to make sure everyone's aware, we're recording all these meetings and it'll all be posted afterwards for viewing. But I thought what I'd do on the first one was we'll just do a little round of a few intros just with some of the core members of the team, just to introduce themselves, just to see how they, so you can put names to faces and give a chance for everyone to just talk a little bit about what they do. And then we'll sort of dive into talking a little bit about what we're doing in the next couple of weeks with milestones, and then really just open up to Q&A for everyone to ask questions. So I'm going to introduce myself first. My name is Mark Fussell, and I'm the product manager for Dapper. And I'm super excited to be able to have this first call and to meet everyone. And we'll just kind of go around and introduce a few other people who are on the call, who are on the team, and just kind of shout out what you do and what your interests are.
Okay, so I'll go first. My name is Yaron. My GitHub handle is Yaron2. I'm on the core Dapper dev team, maintaining the project.
Hi, this is Youngbu. I'm a software engineer working in the Dapper core team. That's it.
Hi, my name is Shalabh Mohan. My name is Shalabh Mohan Shivastav. I'm part of a Dapper core team.
Okay, Luke, do you want to introduce yourself?
Luke, you are muted.
Hi guys, I am Luke Kim. I'm the engineering manager for Dapper and also lead incubations in the Azure CTO office.
Okay, fantastic. There are a few other members who kind of aren't here today or on the call in different places listening in, and we'll shout out to them some other time. So what I wanted to do, let me just share my screen here a moment. I'll switch over to this. First off, I presume everyone's here today because we've just launched Dapper project. We launched it just under 2 weeks ago. We're pretty excited by the feedback that we've had from everyone, and it's great to have such early community engagement jumping in on this and giving us contributions to the repo. In fact, I kind of wanted to do a shout out to some people who have done some early contributions. Roberto Rojas helped us start to build an etcd state store. Anna Rabista from HashiCorp has helped us start off a console state store as well. And then we're also looking at how other people have just put in some contributions there to fixes, looking at samples. And it's been pretty exciting actually just to see the conversations that are happening up on a Gitter channel as well. So, please continue to reach out. We're kind of excited that we're seeing people start to kind of ask us lots of questions. And we really want to stress that the goals of Dapper from the beginning are about building this distributed application runtime where we really want it to, we've seeded it with a lot of experience that we've seen over the years as we built large solutions and services ourselves. But really, this is very much an alpha project. We really want it to be community driven. We want people effectively to come to this and think about what you would like to see in terms of, there are 3 structures. There are the individual building blocks themselves, which are the main components, things like service invocation, things like pub sub, things like state management. And then within inside those, we have individual components that you can contribute to. So that's this components contribute store repo here. And inside this, the way this gets organized is that you can build components for any one of the major types of building blocks. So for bindings, which allow you to communicate with external systems, to pub subsystems, to state stores. And then finally, another place that you can contribute as both within the individual SDKs. So we're pretty excited actually because we already had a couple of implementations of people talking about building Rust SDK. We kicked this off with SDKs for .NET, JavaScript, Go, and Python down here and Java. But we've long want to have all sorts of other SDKs. Rust, COBOL, Scala, you name it. We're open to everyone to be able to help build out these things. So building out SDKs is another place we're interested in having, if your contributions to. Other areas as well is how we integrate with other frameworks. So for example, we did an integration inside our .NET repo here, where we integrated actually with ASP.NET Core runtime. So you'll see inside some of the samples inside here, you'll see samples here for ASP.NET Core runtime. That made it pretty exciting because the ASP.NET Core guys are allowed to have sort of stateful controllers, and we can actually do bindings to external state stores as well. So this is another area. And then the final area, of course, is actually if you're interested in how you contribute to making Dapper run on a variety of different platforms themselves. So what that means is that today we have Dapper that runs on your local machine, and also we have it so it runs on Kubernetes. And Kubernetes will certainly be the primary place that we will focus a lot on making Dapper run as a first-class environment in terms of its integration. But if there are other environments that you want to get Dapper integrated with, we're very keen to help you out on those, whether that's Docker Swarm or whether that's Mesosphere or you name the environment, or just raw VMs around things. So that's a kind of a final place where we look for contributions inside the overall set of repos. So hopefully that kind of gives you a little overview about how we think this project is going to run, and pretty much the goal over the next few weeks and months is to let you in many ways set the roadmap of what you think is important in terms of how this builds out, and effectively focus on some of building out the milestones and roadmap as a result of how we see some of the requests come in from you in terms of the community. Whilst we're on that topic, let me just kind of run through a few little bits of admin. This is our weekly. We're going to be having these calls every 2 weeks. I realize now that I can let people automatically join rather than have them emit through the conference session. So this is going to be, we're going to hold this every 2 weeks. We're going to post these recordings afterwards. We want people to kind of come up ideas for the agenda for what this looks like. On the community site here, inside Dapper here, we have all our community information about how to get in contact with us. So this is scroll down the bottom here. You'll see a lot of people have been using the Gitter channel down here, but we've also set up a mailing list as well. So if you want to go to the mailing list and start asking questions here on Dapper Dev group, this is a Google Groups mailing list. Feel free to post threads of questions here. We've also set up the Google Calendar here, so you can import this for, at the moment, the community events that we have every 2 weeks. So feel free to bring this in. And the other things that we have inside, the other things we have inside here as well, if I scroll down, are our Twitter channel as well. So we'll post regular things that happen on site there. In fact, we posted last week a couple of great videos that both Yaron and Aman put together here that we did with on our Azure Friday talks with Scott Hanselman. So feel free to check those all out. So that's sort of our engagement side of things. And if there are other forms of way that you want to have engagement, feel free to kind of post them inside the Gitter window, and we'll figure that out. So let me jump on to just a little bit of how we think about what we're going to do something over the next couple of milestones, and then I want to open it up for some questions and things for people to kind of give us questions on anything you think is a topic. So at this point in time, we've actually started to, one place you can go to is you can go to our wiki site here. On our wiki, let me just minimize the image. On our wiki here, we have a number of different. Let's get to mute someone on the call here. If someone's got their,
Abhishek, I think you are not muted. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So this is our wiki page here that we keep up to date with how we do our release process. Here's our roadmap. Here's a place actually that's got some FAQs that we're going to build out here. One of the common FAQs, for example, is how does Dapper work with service meshes? And you'll see that on site here, we're actually just posting sort of our iteration plans. And we decided that for the November, we'd keep this sort of light and simple, that we opened up milestones across the Dapper repo, the components contrib repo, and the CLI repo. And you'll see that each one of these are going to be versioned as we push out different versions of these. So if you dive into this milestone at the moment, you'll see here that we've put a number of different things that we're going to build out in terms of how we focus on this particular milestone. At this point in time, we sort of set a date for mid-November for the 0.2x release. And inside here, we kind of kept this fairly light to begin with because we wanted to have opportunity for people to bring back some of their own suggestions. But some of the highlights, at least, that we're going to focus on is providing a comprehensive test infrastructure for doing some end-to-end tests. We have a lot of unit tests at the moment. We're doing tests that span across the different building blocks. So how you do service vindication coupled with pub sub and some of those other ones. We're just putting this in place so that we can make sure that we can catch end-to-end testing scenarios. Another sort of interesting highlight that we're going to focus on in this release is to make the service discovery pluggable. We kind of missed this a little bit from we first released, where the discovery service discovery isn't actually officially a component, but turning it into a component now means that if you want to do the service discovery on different platforms, so today, for example, service discovery on Kubernetes works through the DNS service, and that's what the service discovery implementation takes advantage of that. But of course, other people have said, well, how do I do that on platform X? So, yeah, making this pluggable is going to be an important part for people to be able to integrate Dapper with different platforms. You see here that we've put Cassandra in as a state store, which we think is pretty exciting. We've had a lot of people ask us about that one. And then down here as well, we're integrating one of the building blocks we have is that we have our distributed diagnostics posted out with open census and our telemetry information here. And we're just doing an example of how this fits in with Azure monitoring, which we think is pretty interesting to show how you can do views across a distributed tracing using Azure Monitor. And then finally, another one here is that we have lots and lots of questions around how does Dapper work with service mesh. We're going to make sure that we publish some guidance, publish some samples, publish some little bit of tutorial around this, so it's super clear around how they work together, and there's some good docs around this, because I think that's probably been one of the most frequently asked questions at the moment. So that's sort of where we are at the moment. I'm sure we'll add some more things. I'm sure we'll get some bugs inside here. Correspondingly, inside the components contrib here, at this point in time, we're really looking for anyone who wants to do some contribution inside this for components that they want to build. We're just going to update some of the guidelines here to make them a little bit clearer, and add some more details that have emerged over the last couple of weeks, and just also be consistent with some of the names. You'll see at the moment that with some of the names in the components contrib, we weren't as clear as we could have been. So for example, underneath pub sub here, we could have done with making these a bit clearer in terms of the names of the cloud providers that they're focused on. So that's just something that we're adding to this to make sure that that's a bit clearer inside here. And then finally, we just have an iteration plan here for the CLI, and we tend to put this all together. So that's sort of where we are at the moment. This is kind of our first time that we're going to push out this. One of the questions actually we really wanted to ask here, I'm going to pause at this point, but one of the questions we really wanted to ask people at this point was how frequently you would like to see official releases come out from the release build. We put one for a couple of weeks away at this point in time, just to give people a chance to look at the repos, see what's happening inside them all, and start to do some contributions. But we kind of feel like we should probably do this much more frequently. So one question that we'd like to just get a bit of feedback as we talk about this now is that, how frequently would you like to see the releases? Would you come out once a month, every 2 weeks, once a week? Because we think that that will be a great talking point. So let me open up at this point just for that particular question, because I'd love to hear your thoughts from people around some of these things in terms of the releases and what you think you'd like to be able to see. So if anyone wants to just sort of jump on the call and talk about that, we'll post things in the chat window. feel free to go ahead. Oh, there's some questions on chat. Let me open up. Let's look at the chat inside. What are they? Can you find them? We just stop sharing here a moment. Are there some questions in the chat? Oh, yeah. I mean, that's true. If so, what I mean, here's another thing that we can actually do as well. If there's anyone else who's on the call who would also just like to introduce themselves in terms of what they've been working on, what they're interested in, feel free to jump on that as well and kind of give us a little bit of what your background is, where you think, why you're interested inside Dapper, and what is it you'd like to see inside of this. So feel free to give us that kind of, feel free to do that as well. There is one question here we have at the moment, which is we have Kubernetes, Azure Service Fabric. Why do we have Dapper more than one tool? So are you asking a question about, just maybe clarify that a little bit more, Gudar, in terms of what the question is. Are you asking, will Dapper run across those different environments? All right, well, so at this point then, if no one wants to jump in and talk about releases, yeah, we'll at least add to this the fact that we want to make sure that releases come out on a pretty regular basis. So we'll start to test then, starting to do these a little bit more frequently, and see how that goes. Probably reduce them down to doing them at least every 2 weeks, and posting them onto the repo site, and probably releasing them, say, on a Monday morning, so you can pull those all down. And
hey, Mark, I was going to say, this is Lynn. So about the releases, I think a lot of it, at least for me anyways, and I'm sure probably a lot of people on the call, since it's still so new, I think a lot of us are still really wrapping our heads around it and trying to understand all of its capabilities and where it still falls short and what we need, from kind of a roadmap perspective.
Okay.
And so, for you and the team who have been working on it for months, obviously you're very well versed in it and you're ready to rock and roll. But I think for a lot of us, at least for me anyways, we're still trying to wrap our heads around it and get used to developing with it. So okay. I have a feeling that in the calls to come, people are going to be a lot more vocal than they are on this very first call.
Yes. Well, I mean, that was just part of this. Is we just wanted to, we didn't want to feel as if we waited too long on different releases, and we just did the 0.1 release. It'll be 2 weeks this Wednesday. So effectively, we'll let people iterate on that one for a while.
Sure. I appreciate the faster releases though, rather than waiting a very long time to get bugs and feature enhancements and things like that in. So I prefer a little bit faster release cadence, like that looks like you've kind of set out to do right now. So yeah.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, so in terms of our roadmap, you'll see that there is one posted that we have that was it was a rough draw out to where we are today. If you go and look at Dapper, we actually focus on, if I just share my screen here again, if you go back and if you look inside our repo, inside here, and you go to our the overview here, we actually focus on these 7 particular building blocks here to begin with that we integrate with across the different languages. So the fact that these building blocks are then themselves componentized. So, this service-to-service invocation is about how I do calls between two different services running inside the same environment, the same Kubernetes cluster, or or my one-box environment. So I can do calls between one service or another, pass a set of parameters, and do direct invocation. It's interesting that one of the most common questions we get is, well, how does Dapr fit with service meshes? And the answer is they work together nicely, in the sense of both of them get deployed as sidecars next to your application that gets deployed. If you choose that you want to use Istio or Linkerd or one of these other sidecars for the cross calls between your services, feel free to go ahead with that. That doesn't get in the way effectively of what Dapr is attempting to achieve, in the sense of the service-to-service calls via a service mesh proxy are perfectly valid in terms of the componentization of how it fits in inside Dapr. But you can choose to use the service invocation as well. That gets built on top of using the underlying service discovery mechanism of the platform. The state management allows you to store key value pairs inside different types of state stores. So if you want to call and plug in different types of state stores, we've had etcd added this week, and we're sort of working on other ones like MongoDB, for example. But this just allows you to kind of make stateful, long-running services that can hold state against, as well as the compute inside when they made them highly available. And this gets used as well inside some of our active frameworks for state management here as well. The publish and subscribe allows you to send pub-sub events between two services that are running inside your environment. At the moment, we do this around Redis, but of course, again, it's pluggable. So if you're interested in providing a sort of pluggable state store around other providers, look into that. The bindings and raw resources has probably the greatest choice in terms of how you can connect to external systems and the greatest chance to contribute. This is really about how I can just get events triggered for me from external systems, be that a Kafka queue, be that a RabbitMQ, or do I want to write to some state store? And this is the thing that makes Dapr sort of an event-driven system that you can hook into your code pretty easily, whatever language you come from. I've seen over the last week, actually, there's quite a bit of chatter around axes. It's new to a lot of people. We basically pulled this from work that we've done over the years, everything from Orleans through to reliable actors in Service Fabric, and put this inside here because we see this as to be quite a compelling framework for people to use. And then finally, distributed tracing. We've found that over the years that the visualization and the ability to see calls between your services to track the sort of performance between them all, push them into things like Zipkin and Prometheus and other ways that you can actually see those calls and trace them across your individual services is pretty important for you to be able to start doing diagnostics and tracing inside live systems. So that's kind of where we sit today inside this first release. And then there's, of course, there's this big extensible bucket here. So adding more building block capabilities that can be used from any one of your languages or frameworks of your choice, run it on any platform of your choice. That's the whole goal as we build this out over the next few weeks, months, years. So hopefully everyone's sort of familiarized themselves with this, because we pretty much want to sort of embrace the goals of being language agnostic, framework agnostic, and in particular be community driven, open and vendor neutral, and seek contributions from you. At the same time, of course, we're very dedicated to making sure that we get this to a production quality sort of code that we can actually deploy and run inside production environments. So, one of our key things that we're going to be doing over the next few months is getting production workloads building on top of Dapr, whether it's workloads that we build ourselves at Microsoft or whether it's ones that you build inside the community or with customers. So we can really harden and make sure that we get Dapr to a production quality, battle hardened, well tested runtime that can be used in proven in scenarios and things. And we feel as we brought a lot of that experience already to this, but of course, you know, real world workloads are the thing that really matters. So I'm going to pause again at this point and see if there are questions that people want to post inside the chat window, or just open up your mic and start asking things for us about where we think Dapper's going, questions you have about particular feature sets, even if you want to ask, you know, particular thing about a bug, you know, there's no question that we will not accept.
Hi Mark, I'm Rajiv, and I really like the idea of Dapper really. So I'd like to have ask few questions like what will the automation process of the release? So will it depend only the GitHub Actions or any Azure DevOps pipeline for that? Why Azure DevOps? Because it's a Microsoft product, and Dapper is also an open source product of Microsoft. So will there be any collaboration between Azure DevOps and the Dapper, or not?
So your question is what's the integration between Azure DevOps and Dapper?
Yeah, I mean the release automation process. Are we going to integrate any kind of Azure DevOps pipeline, or we will be solely depend on the GitHub Actions for the automation process?
So we will update a release process. Right now, we already moved to GitHub Actions from the Azure DevOps.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so there's a release process at the moment that we have. If you go to actually whereabouts is it on the release process down here? So there's a development guide down here, which is how you can start to build and contribute in terms of how you build it. And then this has sort of a continuous integration guide here, where we use GitHub Actions here for Dapper. So that's the release process that we have in place at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
But that's for you to build and contribute into all of this. So hopefully this has been fairly straightforward in terms of getting this up and running. And if you have any questions on this, that was Young Boo, by the way, talking just now. He's a guy who's built all of this, put this in place. So if there's anything that is not too clear about this, you know, throw something on the GitHub channel, which we'll figure it out. But that's what we're doing for CI/CD at the moment.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Hey, if there's not any other initial questions straight away, maybe it would be a good idea. I think Luke Kim asked, you know, hey, should people on the call introduce themselves? I don't necessarily know if we all need to introduce ourselves, but I think it would be nice if the core team introduced themselves and let everyone know exactly what they're working on and things like that.
Okay, well, we did that a little at the beginning, but we can do it again. Let's do it again.
Yeah. Sorry, I was a few minutes late. I had some issues joining. I needed to update my Zoom. So
well, given that, okay, I think so Lynn, thanks for that. Actually, it's a pretty good idea. Given that quite a few people have just joined in the last 15 minutes, well, let's do it again, just so that people have an idea of what we work on. So my name is Mark Fussell, and I'm the product manager for Dapper. I've been working on it for several months now. Pulled a lot of the concepts of experience I've been working on and building distributed systems about the last 12 years across a number of different projects and products that have come out of Microsoft. I spend a lot of time building things in Service Fabric, but spend a lot of time recently on Kubernetes and making sure I understand how we get building application programming models on top of all of that. So the whole goal of Dapper is to focus on developers and to bring developer experience for that, and make it easier for people. So that's my role. If anyone else on the core Dapper team would like to reintroduce themselves again.
I'll go next. Hi, this is Aman, and I work as engineering lead on a Dapper project. And I'm also part of the Service Fabric team within Azure Compute, and we're working to bring the learnings and knowledge we had from developing distributed systems on Service Fabric platform to Dapper, so that it can scale well to user requirements running in production scenarios. Next.
Yeah, I can introduce. Hi, my name is Shalabh Srivastav. I am in Service Fabric, and I want to working as a engineer in Dapper core team. And it's been like quite many years that I've been Azure, so I want to use all the learnings from Azure and put in a Dapper. That's it from my side.
Okay, my name is Yaron. I work for the Azure CDO Incubations team, working mostly on open source projects for quite some time now. I work on the Dapper core runtime, CLI, components contrib, and yeah, mostly all around.
Hi, my name is Youngbu. I'm working in the Azure OCTO incubation team, and I'm software engineer working in the Dapper core team. I recently joined the team 3 months ago. Yeah, that's it.
Hi, my name's Luke Kim. I'm the engineering manager on Dapper, also lead incubations for the Azure CTO office. And I'm actually here in the CTO office. Here is Mark. Actually, we're also working on Dapper. And the other project we launched last week was Rudder and OEM, which also came out of the incubations team here as well. So check that out as well.
Okay, good. So I see there's quite a few questions being posted inside the chat window. So feel free to post them in the chat window, or we will actually kind of just verbally as well. I mean, unmute your microphone if anyone else wants to introduce themselves. We'd love to just hear from where you are. So David asks in regards to frequency of releases, seems a little bit early to say. True. Okay, we heard that from Lynn as well. So we'll just keep this next release on schedule for November, and we'll see how we take it from there. Dtorno asks, I cannot put my SQL finger on it just yet, but I believe Dapper service invocation and service meshes won't get along well. They seem to at first glance. Love to hear your thoughts on why you think that's the case. I think it is true, though, it is on the burden is on us to kind of publish some better guidance on this to make them run side by side. But effectively, we think that they actually will be working beautifully together. But we'll love to hear your thoughts on that, actually, if there's anything that you think that will be an issue. Anything you want to add to that? Well, okay. So as we put some of our more guidance together onside that, I'm sure we'll run into some questions, and we'll reach out to you on some of those. Okay, so it says Dapper looks to me like an extension to the idea of service meshes and infrastructure for microservices to communicate and work on top of it. Is that right? Well, that's not strictly true. No, the way we think about Dapper is that we're actually bringing together a set of building blocks that allow you to help build distributed applications. And given that most distributed applications are built now with their microservices architecture in place, they're sort of empowering you to bring best practices to how you build those apps. Now, one of those things you need in terms of building them is good communication between your services. And in the role of that, service meshes play a role. And you certainly need to be able to communicate and call from one service to another. However, that's just part of the whole thing altogether. And Dapper itself is not a service mesh. It integrates with service meshes and actually does provide a cross-service to service method invocation mechanism, and that's there's a direct call between the services that run inside your environment. But it provides other capabilities, most notably things like state management. And a good example here, for example, is we've taken ASP.NET Core as a runtime, and we've now brought along to that the concept of state management. So I can have stateful ASP.NET running ASP.NET controllers, for example. Or another example is, if you're familiar with Azure Functions today don't have the ability to do pub/sub between them all. So we're able to bring along Dapper's pub/sub capability and say, over a simple local HTTP call, you can now actually do a pub/sub between individual functions that run inside your Azure framework. So those are sort of just two that we sort of focused on for now, but it could apply to sort of any framework of your choice. So Dapper is not a service mesh. It works with service meshes. It does provide service-to-service invocation as one of its capabilities, but each one of these building blocks is tightly independent and local from each other, so that you could choose to use the pub/sub building block independent of for example, state management. And you can choose one of them, all of them, or just a few of them. And that's kind of the goal around this, is that you look at the capabilities of where you come from with the language of your choice or the framework of your choice. And now, if you want to enhance that in some way, you can pull inside Dapr as a sidecar, running as a process or in a containerized environment, and take advantage of those capabilities in a standardized HTTP or gRPC approach. Of course, we want to make that experience nice for you as well by building language SDKs on top of that. For example, the one that we've done inside .NET, and we want to build out, and we're building out others around that, which is part of our roadmap. But generally, that's the goal around that you see Dapr in. So another question is, are there ideas on supporting other sidecars, e.g. service gateways? Yes, if you want to run other sidecars next to your process, Dapr doesn't stop that in any way. Will we? Maybe one of the questions over time is, how will those integrate together? We don't know just yet, and I'm sure we'll discover things like that as we go along in terms of other sidecars that run side by side with your process. Question here, is Dapr going to be strictly CLI? Is the question there about PowerShell, or is it something else? That would be good to kind of hear your thoughts more on that. So I can't pronounce your handle because it's impronounceable. So you tell us some more thoughts about when you say, is it CLI? Oh, CLI versus GUI.
Is it regarding tooling integration with VS Code? You are looking for some kind of extension for VS Code which enables you to develop and debug through GUI tooling environments? I think, Mark, we can take on when we get. Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Yes, I wouldn't. Oh, except from VS Code, I think more like browser-based run, cloud.run to Azure. We don't really GUI planned at this moment in time, but it's an interesting thought about what that means. Certainly, we're looking at VS Code integration, and we're thinking about how we can build a plugin now. And yes, and Alex, you posted a good example there. VS Code integration similar to Kubernetes would be awesome, but probably you can the Kubernetes plugin already.
Could you also provide more information about what you mean by browser-based integrations? Maybe if you want to write an issue in the GitHub repo, that would be better, so that we can discuss it there.
Okay. So Millard asks, one typical question is, how can we get involved with the project as a contributor? The way I point this out at the moment is that we have contribute guidelines inside here. But if you look at our repos, the best way to start it, one of the easiest ways to get started is our components contrib repo. And inside here, you'll see that there's a list of components that we have that are listed for across the different types of areas. You've got components for bindings, hub subs, state stores, secret stores, and for tracing. And so, for example, if you go into the bindings component, here's a list of bindings that you can build as a component type for getting events and triggers from external systems or sending to external systems. So one of the easiest ways to contribute is to look at the interface that gets defined for these. And so each one of these particular components has an interface definition around them for the input and output binding in this particular case. And by implementing this and contributing to a component against that interface, you can then plug in to having an eventing mechanism via the bindings to an external system. So that's one great way to get started. And a similar flow applies to, for example, the state stores. So inside state stores, again here, just recently we launched with just Redis at the beginning, and in the last couple of weeks, people from community have added console and etcd. And again, there's an interface definition inside here for a state store. And when you implement this interface definition, you can then go in and contribute state stores for that particular type here. So here's the etcd state store that you can build out and contribute that and review it. So that's a great way to get started in terms of the components contribs. But outside of that, of course, there is core runtime. There's core runtime inside here. There's core samples. You want to add new samples. We've had quite a few little updates sent to us as well. And then, of course, there's the actual SDKs themselves. So if you're interested in starting an SDK for a particular language, or thinking about the design of how we bring the actual language type definitions to a particular SDK, that's another area we can add contributions to. And the SDKs at the moment we have are across Rust, .NET, JavaScript, Go, Java, and Python down here. So that's kind of how to get started inside some of these areas inside. And if you look at the contribute guidelines, shout out if you need more information on those, but that's effectively the guidance on how to do that.
Mark, I'd like to answer 2 questions from the chat window.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so one question is by Oliver Tomlinson, and he's asking if when using an external state provider, is the state isolated between each Dapr-backed microservice? So the answer is yes. In Dapr, you have the concept of an ID, and state is encapsulated for that ID. So if you have, one app with one ID and 5 instances, that state will be shared by those 5 instances. If you have 2 apps with 2 distinct IDs, the state will be isolated for these 2 separate IDs. And the other one is by Luke P. Is the state management always going to be limited to key value pairs, or will there be richer querying capabilities added later? So actually, that's an interesting question, because when we started looking at state, we saw that we could actually easily add SQL interfaces. And I don't know if there's an issue about that. If there isn't, then feel free to open one, because we've actually got that question asked by multiple people. And so the answer is yes, we will be looking at supporting SQL queries, which we can do with some stores.
And Yaron, could you give more details about how the keys are stored based on app ID, like how the actual key is constructed, so that users can query it outside of the Dapper runtime as well?
Yeah, so well, there's only so much I can cover in the call. We actually do have documentation about that, which I'll post later on. But basically what the Dapper runtime does is it creates a very unique key, which is comprised of a combination of the application ID and then the key name. So it's pretty simple to query the underlying store. If the underlying store is SQL supportive, so it's really easy to do. If it's something like Redis, you can do a key scan prefix for that particular key composition. And for actors, it's basically the app ID dash the actor type dash the key value. So that's specifically for actors. But again, you can find more info about that, and also on how to query the individual state stores inside our documentation. And if you can't find it, just open an issue about it and we'll guide you there. Rajib is asking, can I test Dapper with K3S or Kind? I don't know about Kind, but with K3S, yes, you should be able to.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure by everyone by now, just right, go back here. If you look at our repos as well, one of our repos is where we have our getting started guide here for our samples. Some number of people asking me, how do I get started around these things? We just recently put versioning in on our samples, by the way, when we did this on our docs, so that when we do a release, we'll make sure that all the samples and the docs correspond to a particular release. So as we go to release 0.2 that comes out in November, we'll make sure all the samples here correspondingly get tagged inside the repo, so we can pull out the right samples. And if people are interested in, like, this is the set we have today, we did sort of a simple hello world and one on Kubernetes, and there's one that show multiple invocation calls to different, that should be calculated as multiple invocation calls to different languages. The PubSub one allows me to do PubSub between 2 different services, and this binding one shows me how I can push and send events through to Kafka, and you sort of plug in other binding components inside here. So if there are other ideas you want around samples you'd like to see, so I think this is another area that we think that we need to expand upon and things. We're great to hear your thoughts on sort of inside that.
Yeah, and also about bindings. So we've received actually a lot of contributions for components contrib. We received a PR for net streaming or net server actually yesterday. And especially with bindings and pub/sub and all these components, it'd be great if you can let us know which ones you'd like to see. You know, if you can start working on one. And also, if you do start working on a component, please open an issue so that we don't get a case where, you know, multiple people are actually working on the same thing, because that happened once. So I'll make sure there's an issue and that you assign yourself to that issue and state to everyone that you're working on some component. But yeah, so about, you know, bindings and pub/sub, just let us know what you'd like to see there, and if you can do it yourself, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, and in fact, even at if we go to the actual individual milestones inside here, and we look at, actually, do I want this? If we actually go to the individual milestones inside here, we actually mark things as help wanted as well. So you know, feel free to click on the help wanted inside some of these. You can mark them, either assign them to yourself, or there are inside the repos. We mark things inside the component contrib one. We put help wanted inside there, and feel free to either assign it yourself or look at some of the help wanted ones and pick them up from there. I think actually inside the component contrib one inside here we put help wanted. So if you look inside the issues inside here, we tagged a number of these with help wanted. You see this one here. So if you want to add a DynamoDB for state management, I think actually someone's already signed themselves for this. So fantastic. This is where we kind of stick them help wanted tags inside these things for ideas.
Yeah, I also want to add that even for the issues which don't have help wanted tag and which are not assigned to anyone, feel free to assign them. And if you plan to work on them, just let us know.
So we have just under 10 minutes to go. I want to make sure that people have a chance to continue to ask questions of any form you like, anything about releases, what we do, plan for roadmap, technical questions, things you'd like to see in the docs. You know, this is time for you to really, I know, to kind of ask us any topic you want. Well, can you show the metrics component? As in a demo? So when you say metrics component, are you talking about diagnostics tracing there for H80FIL? Okay, demo and diagnostics. Okay, I didn't have a demo set up right now, but that was a great topic to touch on, because I don't think we've shown a great demo, and we don't have one in the docs at the moment. In terms of, we have a tutorial to go through, so you can actually walk through a tutorial that we have inside our Dapper docs. There is a tutorial on, and I think it's under best practices. No, not under best practices. It's under I'll post it later. There is a tutorial of how you can walk through and start doing the Zipkin for doing some of the diagnostics, but we'll do that on the next call. So on the next call, we'll do a demo of showing diagnostics and the metrics across the components, and we'll do it with a couple of open source components like Zipkin, and we'll do it with, say, Azure Monitor, and so that's a great idea for the next call. But I don't have a demo I can show you right now. But I'll post a link of the tutorial guidance on how you can do it yourself to see the diagnostics. So Oliver says, as a big user of Cosmos, we built our own autoscalers to increase, decrease RUs when we start getting throttling given that you're trying to abstract the mechanics of the underlying storage provider, have you any thoughts about how Dapper might handle this for us? That's a scale in and scale out for, but this is scale in and scale out for Cosmos itself. Is that correct? Okay, so I mean, that's interesting to kind of bring up that topic. Dapper itself probably isn't too much focused on scaling the underlying infrastructure. So for example, if you look at another similar project, and that's the one called CADA, which allows you to scale and as an autoscaler for Kubernetes, that allows you to look at events that come from a queue and scale based upon that. Dapper will work nicely with autoscalers, for example. So if you've built an autoscaler inside for scaling out Cosmos, wherever you're running your code, then the actual applications themselves will scale out correspondingly as you spin up new instances of your application with Dapper running as sidecars around this. So I'd love to kind of be a little bit clear about where you're running your code and how that will work together. But in itself, Dapper itself doesn't deal with scaling the underlying infrastructure. It's at the developer level.
Yeah, Dapper and CADA might also scale your pods based on, load on Cosmos DB. Yeah, but it won't scale Cosmos DB for you.
Yes. So the next question is, turns out traceability is doable when you run into issues with tutorials, but you really need to start to understand how to dive into the pods and logs. Correct. So just be very nice if there's a simple way to figure that out and where the error is. Agreed. Will.
So Alex, would it be beneficial, for example, if you could use the Dapper CLI to get the logs or errors from a running Kubernetes pod, or if you're running it locally in your machine from the Dapper process? Oh, okay, so I'll take that as a yes. If we could, yeah, okay, good, great, awesome.
Awesome. Okay.
Good
okay, idea.
Great. So we can take a look at that. Sure.
Yeah, post an issue. Feel free, raise an issue now, stick it inside there, and we'll look at it. It'd be great if we could start to track these through issues, because that way we can actually start to have the conversation and keep it on the issue thread.
All right, great. Thanks, Alex.
Okay, I can start to close this call down then. We'll be having a couple more minutes for questions. You want to talk about anything on your roadmap or anything that you want to ask us from the team? If you're coming to Microsoft Ignite next week, and after that there's KubeCon, we'll have quite a lot of presence at both those events. So there's Microsoft Ignite next week that's being held in Orlando. Feel free to come and check us out there. We're going to be standing on some of the booths down there. If you check out the Kubernetes container booth, you'll come and find us. We'll have Dapper t-shirts on by then, hopefully. And then if you're going to KubeCon, which we'll talk about the next, will be just before, we'll have a community call just before that one as well, but we'll have a big presence there as well. Come find us on the Microsoft booth and kind of ask us a bunch of questions. Again, you'll find us because we'll have a bunch of Dapper t-shirts. And heck, we'll even probably might have some t-shirts to hand out if you kind of come and find us. We'll certainly have lots of stickers to hand out. So if you kind of find us one of those events, stickers and t-shirts, we'll have plenty of those things, and hopefully and if you ever kind of want to come and meet us in person, feel fine anytime to come past Redmond and hang out with us as well. So we want to try and meet you in person and give you fun stuff. Okay, thanks guys. We'll raise an issue, discuss this further around scaling on Cosmos. Okay, thanks Oliver. Good. If there are any last questions, I'm going to close out this call then. I really want to kind of close out saying thank you enormously for all of you who've started to kind of just engage with where we are today. And we'll jump on the Gitter channel at all times of the day. Feel free also to use the forum to post questions into as well if you want to sort of thread upon stuff. And we really kind of appreciate everything that you've done so far for us, and we just want to keep this channel open as much as we can. We're not a super large team at the moment, but we know that we're going to produce something that's going to be fantastic, hopefully that everyone uses, and from that we'll grow this, grow the community and grow everyone else who wants to contribute to it all. So thank you. I just want to point that out.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. Thank you then, everyone. See you in 2 weeks' time.
Bye. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.